way they're trying to spin this now, the New York Times, their big headline is today that other members of Trump's campaign had contact with Russian intelligence. Listen to this story. This is from the New York Times, a former newspaper. Phone records and intercepted calls show that members of Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and other Trump associates had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election, according to 4 current and former American officials. So Obama operatives feeding stuff to the New York Times. American law enforcement and intelligence agencies intercepted the communications around the same time they were discovering evidence that Russia was trying to disrupt the presidential election by hacking into the Democratic National Committee, 3 of the officials said. The intelligence agencies then sought to learn whether the Trump campaign was colluding with the Russians on the hacking. The officials interviewed in recent weeks said that so far they had seen no evidence of such cooperation. So they're talking to the Russians. Trump had a lot of business dealings with Russia, and they especially singled out Paul Manafort, who has had contacts with Russia that I consider unsavory, but they were legal. I mean, they were completely legal, right? And they said one of the guys was Paul Manafort, and they didn't name the other people. So, of course, Manafort has dealings with Russia. I mean, the guy was practically, the publicity guy for the president of the Ukraine. And Manafort's response was, "This is absurd. I have no idea what this is referring to. I've never knowingly spoken to Russian intelligence officers, and I've never been involved with anything to do with the Russian government or the Putin administration or any other issues under investigation today." The point is that they talk to businessmen in Russia, the businessmen and the intelligence officers. You cannot tell them apart. This is a nothing burger story. Okay, it's a nothing burger story. And by the way, Spicer also dealt with this. There was no illegality involved with what Flynn did. There's no reason why this administration, even before they come into office, can't call up another government, even if you don't happen to like the government, and say, we don't like the sanctions that were imposed on you, or, hold your fire until we get into office, or whatever. There's nothing illegal about this. They can do. I mean, they could talk about the Logan Act. As I said, no one's ever been prosecuted. No one ever could be prosecuted on it, as far as I'm concerned, because it violates the First Amendment. So, okay, let's just take a look. You remember in 2012, when Obama famously left the mic open and he was talking to the outgoing president, Medvedev, a lot of V's, whatever his name is. He was going out, Putin was coming in, and Obama leaned over and was talking about our missile defense system, right? He was talking about our missile defense system and was caught on a hot mic saying, "Oh, I'll have a lot of flexibility after the next election, because it's my last election." Now, I want to play cut number 3, which is the way CBS News covered this story. Okay, here it is.
President Obama was overheard giving Medvedev a very candid political assessment of his ability to deal with the major problems between the U.S. and Russia. All of the issues can be solved, the president told Medvedev, but he stressed that it was particularly important for incoming Russian President Vladimir Putin to give him space on the missile defense system, which the U.S. and NATO want to install in Europe.
This is my last election. Yeah, after my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and understand.
Republican presidential contender Mitt Romney said the overheard remarks signaled that the president plans to cave to Russia on missile defense.
That is an alarming and troubling development. This is no time for our president to be pulling his punches with the American people.
White House officials shrugged off Republican criticism as campaign rhetoric. But, Scott, they did acknowledge the president's remarks. And in a statement, they said, since 2012 is an election year in both countries, it is clearly not a year in which we are going to achieve a breakthrough.
And you can't see it in this cut, but Scott Pelley, the anchorman and a Democrat hack, is smirking through the whole thing. He's, it's campaign rhetoric. It's also now listen to Chuck Todd covering. Remember these sanctions that we're talking about. These sanctions were imposed by Obama as a political ploy to basically delegitimize the election of Donald Trump. He was just making a big fuss over this hacking into the election. He was making a big show of it, which he would never have done it. He would never have done it, I don't think, if Hillary was elected. Here's Chuck Todd covering Flynn's resignation.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Todd here in Washington. Welcome to MTP Daily, and welcome to day one of what is arguably the biggest presidential scandal involving a foreign government since Iran-Contra. Take a breath. Hyperbole aside, folks, hunker down, because this is a Class 5 political hurricane.
So not putting in our missile defense system, whispering to the Russians that don't worry about it, I'm not going to put in the missile defense system, that's just campaign rhetoric. But having a perfectly legal conversation with, the Russian ambassador about some silly sanctions, that's a Class 5 hurricane. The worst thing since Iran-Contra. The only scandal they covered because it was Reagan's scandal. That's the only reason he knows it happened. He doesn't know about any of the scandals that happened during Obama.